Just kind of X's and O's. Obviously, we made a few trades today. We traded Robbie Chirinos and Todd Frazier to the Mets. We also traded Mike Minor to Oakland. And we'll have some additional roster moves here over the course of the next couple days. We've got we're going to bring Eli White up. We're going to bring Anderson Tejeda up. We are going to give Kyle Cody an opportunity to start. I think we'll also here in a short time have John King up and he will have an opportunity. I think with some of we'll also have Elvis is going to be activated. Brett Martin's going to be activated, and Rugi's going to go on the IL with his with the eye infection. It's not anything major, but it's just taking a little bit longer to clear up than you'd otherwise want. And so it's going to be an opportunity for those guys. For continued opportunity for Kiner, for Jose Trevino, and others, and excited to get a look at these guys. I think in the short term, I think our defense will be much improved. I think this club will go out and play with energy, and excited to learn and see more of a number of these young players.
Okay, if you have questions, raise your hands, please. Levi.
There was a lot of buzz over the last couple of weeks about Lynn. Obviously, he stays put. I was looking back over some of the comments last year when Mike Minor didn't go, and just we were talking about the offers weren't there to match what you guys valued Minor at. Was this a similar thing or a different situation here, or what happened there?
Somewhat similar. I mean, honestly, we had a different. A little bit different value in our minds on Lance than we did a year ago with Mike, and I think other teams did too. Based on interest both this year and last year. Lance is probably the only guy that we didn't trade that I'm going to talk about at all on an individual basis, just because I don't really want to get into rumors and whatnot. But I've kept Lance apprised of conversations, and really there was I think two things going on. One is just the obvious, where we are in the standings, and if there's an opportunity to bring back the young talent that would kind of difference making young talent that help the organization. Use the term long term, but certainly in the future. We were very open to that. And the flip side is, I look at Lance. I think he's one of the best pitchers in the game right now, and has been since the start of 2019, and has been a very good pitcher for his entire career. And not just that, but I think like kind of the tone setter that he is for the young pitchers coming up here, and what he does for that group as well. So kind of valued both pieces of that. We went into it very open-minded. We had, we were telling other clubs like that, it would have to be something that was commensurate with how we value him, and what he would do, what he does for us, and what he would do for another team in a pennant race, and really, multiple pennant races. And we obviously didn't get to a point where we were comfortable that the value was there.
In your opinion, did the weird 2020 season that we're having impact? If this had been a 162 game season and this conversation was happening July 31st, would this have been a different conversation, you think?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, there was some talk about that with clubs, but that kind of, I thought, died down here as over the last week or so. And I think as the league has demonstrated that we're going to be able to play and finish, and we're going to crown a champion, I didn't get the sense there was a lot of hesitancy there. There was, hesitancy in some areas to take on salary, certainly this year and in future years. And I think what where the biggest effect of that really was, it ties into the financial side, was with young players, and that teams were probably. It's been increasing over the last few years. The reluctance to include young talent in deals, but I think it was even more so this year with the just the overall economic impact on the country, and certainly on the economics of individual clubs. So I think teams really factor that in even more so than usual, which is saying something, because it's been a major increasing factor here over the last several years.
And then the last thing for me is keeping Lynn and some of the other guys that you said you were going to discuss. I guess same question as last year. Does this signal that you guys are going to, that ownership is willing to invest heavily in the off season and sort of keep a core of guys together for contention in 2021?
Honestly, Levi, just not prepared to answer that right now. I mean, I think there's still a lot that we need to sort through, and see what the off season brings. I mean, there's clearly going to be an impact, a rolling impact from this year into next as far as what we do this winter. But how much of an effect there is overall across the board, and what that ultimately allows us to do, remains to be seen. And I think holding on to some of the guys that we did, it doesn't close any doors. I mean, obviously there is an effect on how long they're under contract for, which certainly impacts how teams will view them. But we still have the options to all the options that were available this point are potentially available this winter as well.
Kevin?
I don't know, maybe this is almost rephrasing one of Levi's questions, JD, but as we sit here an hour and a half after the deadline, how would you describe what this organization's direction is going forward, or how should we interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a trying to think the right word. Our moves today were not intended to make any sort of declaration different than they were a week ago. Which is, listen, we're obviously not good enough right now. I mean, that's clear. We've talked about that a little bit, and really we're just trying to improve. And had the value been there to make some of the deals that we were interested in making, like we would have moved some of our guys on our club, and it would have been painful, but we would have done it for the right reasons. Ultimately, we couldn't force it. We weren't going to force it, and that doesn't necessarily change the fact that we know we need to continue to develop a young group and supplement from the outside as well.
So now, with everything that's taken place today, I asked Chris about this the other day, but with everything that's taken place today, is there any, along with the you call up Eli White, and I expect you want to see him to play a little bit, and you mentioned Cody's going to start. Is there any desire for you to see more of this experiment of Kiner at shortstop, and does Tejeda get regular at bats at second base? What's your thought process there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Woody will address that with you guys as far as how he plans to roll guys out there. But yeah, I do think that. These guys can play, and they're talented, and Elvis will still play, and but I do think it creates some competition where your performance dictates your playing time and not necessarily service time or contract. I think that's ultimately where we'd like to get to, and who's helping the club most as we move forward.
And do you, like right now, you said before that White is. I think people in your organization, rather, have said White may be your best defensive outfielder. Do you view him as a center fielder, or would Taveras still get the primary looks in center?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good debate. I mean, I think Leote is, double plus defender out there in center field, so it's pretty high praise. But Eli has taken to the move to the outfield very, very naturally, and I actually think it's going to help him offensively, along with some of the adjustments he's made with the minor league hitting group. They've done an outstanding job with him. He's done an outstanding job. So, I mean, listen, I think on the days where there will be days where it's Joey, Eli, and Leote out in the outfield, however Woody wants to deploy them, and I think part of the goal, and especially in this ballpark, is going to be, having an outfield that can really cover the big field and help our pitching staff.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, Jeff.
How much did Lance's contract for next year play into your decision to keep him? I mean, you're not going to be able to get a pitcher like that for $8 million in free agency.
It played a role, but I mean, honestly, it was mostly about the talent, both his talent and what we would have had to have coming back, because obviously he's worth more than what he's earning right now, the way he's performing. So it played maybe a smaller role, but it was really about talent.
Okay, and then how uncertain is the budget for next year, considering all things that have happened?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a range. That, we have a number we've been using for planning purposes, but I would expect that we will have additional conversations on that before we, start moving into the off season.
Conversations which way? Either way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a yes. It's a yes. I'm not certain exactly what the overall budget will be. It'll be down from where it was this year, but I'm not sure exactly where.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Kevin?
John, would it be fair to say that the market for serviceable aces have become at a fairly cheap price and for next year was overrated?
I don't. The only way I'd characterize it, Kevin, is just that the deal that we were comfortable making was not there. And I think some clubs, viewed. I don't remember. I think I don't remember if it was Levi or Evan asked the question about how the short season, the expanded playoffs, and all those different factors. I think that affected how some people viewed their standings. A lot of teams are pretty well entrenched in a playoff spot, and there's some that may don't have even a lot of different potential outcomes. Right? They kind of know where they're gonna sit, and I do think that played into it a little bit. But I think it was more about the overall, economy in the market and the general desire to hold on to young talent. And we were offered, a number of clubs were interested in making deals and offered us young players, but based on our evaluations, we weren't comfortable that it was enough.
Okay, what else? Steven?
Katie, you said you had kept Lance apprised of kind of what was going on, and you acknowledged that the other day as well. Was there conversations you had with other players during this, or are there some conversations you might need to have now, considering some of the stuff that was out there about certain guys that might be moving that are still here?
Yeah, I'd had a couple talks with guys. It's always a fine line because I don't want to, I kind of try to read the situation, and I don't want. I want guys to be at as much at ease as possible when they're out there, competing and performing. It's hard enough as it is. So, in some situations, if guys are, I feel like kind of want to know and maybe are pressing a little bit and want a little bit of information. Sometimes the guys have reached out to me, or agents have reached out to me and try to, fill them in. And in other situations, you can tell guys don't, they don't want to. They see the MLB Network across the board or ESPN across the board, and when they walk through the clubhouse and they try not to look. And in those cases, I try to respect that. So but I did have a few conversations, and then I did call a few of the guys after the deadline, and you could always tell their voice when when I call right after the deadline, because they're not sure if it's usually they're expecting that means that they got traded, and in this case I was telling a few of them that they were here and they should pack and go to Houston.
Real quick, as an entree question, since you brought Houston, everything on go for that now, or is there any changes now considering the A's are not playing and all
No, we haven't been given any reason to think otherwise. I actually have been meaning to call James Click and connect with him. He texted me earlier just to touch base. We have not spoken yet on it, but I'm, when we talked to MLB yesterday, like we were reassured that the games were on.
Other questions? Chris?
Either as part of your conversations with Lance or just conversations you're having internally, is a contract extension an option for Lynn right now?
Yeah, I think when I didn't word it very well, but when I referenced earlier that all the options that were kind of on the table this week are still available to us this winter, that's one of them.
What else? Other questions? Levi?
15 minutes here talking about the trades we make, and I haven't even asked about the ones we did. Mike Minor, that's not an insignificant deal, and just curious, I know it was being named later, and we can't make anything official, but as far as the return for Minor, A, how do you feel about that? And then I guess B, as far as scouting went in a year like this, trying to keep it even philosophical, like, is there value in sort of, were you more comfortable with guys that were younger because maybe you had more scouting more recently on them?
Yeah, so we made the deal with Oakland. We're getting back 2 young players and some international money or international pool space as well. I'd say on the 2 players we got from Oakland, one of whom we knew very, very well in the draft process and scouted as well last summer. The other of whom we probably weren't quite as familiar with in the draft process, but liked out playing professionally last year, and it's kind of an awkward deal. I think I was told some of the names have been kind of floated out there, and they're not technically Rangers at this point, so I'd prefer not to address them specifically. But yeah, these are guys that we probably value. I think higher than the industry does at this point, and think that they will be valued more aligned with how we see them as we go forward.
And then as far as the Mets, how did you guys pull off 2 different deals within about 10 minutes of each other that were not the same deal?
Yeah, we were talking about them together, and then. We were also talking about, basically what happened was we were talking about them together, and then we were talking to other clubs about Todd Frazier as well, and so we ended up doing the portion with Robbie first, and then the Frazier piece came together just afterwards.
Okay, and just for housekeeping, is that when those 2 guys in Colorado, is that 3 players to be named later coming back from the Mets at this point?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
A few more. Evan? Please unmute yourself.
I'm now unmuted, thank you. In regards to the comment about not knowing exactly where the payroll will be next year, but it will be down some from this year, we do know about all the economic impacts of no fans in the stadium, but what if anything should your fans take away from the idea that this team will have a smaller payroll next year?
Yeah, I don't think there's a larger message there other than I think it's the reality of the world we're in right now. Revenues are down significantly, and as in a lot of businesses, that's going to affect expenditures, and we're no different.
A technical thing on the Mets thing. Well, we've identified or we've reported players on the Oakland thing. Does the Mets situation function a little bit differently in that you may have a group of players who ultimately make a decision on?
Yeah, one of them is a group of players. One of them is we know who it is.
is already decided. Okay. I think that's it for this minute. Thank you very much.
Anything else? We'll take a couple more. Kevin?
John, I think some of the confusion on at least my part is that I'm not sure how you're, and you kind of, Devin asked this question earlier, but I'm a little, I guess, I'm a little fuzzy on where do you think the team is right now? Would you call this a rebuild at this point? Because it feels like you're kind of straddling a fence a little bit here.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Kevin. I mean, I do. I think that's fair, and that's why I think we were very open to the idea of acquiring, younger players that fit more long term, because I think that is the more likely window for us. But we didn't want to force it to kind of check the box and say, hey, we traded veterans for young players. We just didn't feel that the value was there, and I think the good thing in our minds is that the opportunity to do that isn't over today. I think we a lot of times look at these events, whether it's the winter meetings or the trade deadline, we view them as like isolated days when they're really just one more kind of mark on the calendar. We had several conversations today where either us or the other team kind of ended it with, listen, this is something that we do have interest in. It's probably a little bit of a bigger conversation to try to race in here at the deadline, and let's revisit that this winter. So I don't view today as the end of anything other than it's a 1 month hiatus until we can really re-engage with some of these teams.
Thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? You all good? I will go one more, Levi.
Thanks. This is never been a general manager, so I don't know, but it strikes me that the value for, let's say, a Lance Lynn might be less in the winter than it would be now where it's have him. Does that hurt your negotiating position to hold off and wait for the winter time if the team is not getting him for this kind of time?
Yeah, listen. On paper, a year of a player versus a year and a month or so. Obviously, there's a difference. But I think that's kind of theoretical. When in practice, I obviously have a little bit more information as far as what the actual potential returns could have been, and I feel, listen, if there was an overwhelming deal out there, like we probably would have made it, but I think the deals that we made, I think I would not have felt very confident sitting here, and I would not have been proud of some of those deals had I made them, and we made them, I should say, and I don't think our fans would have been happy about it either.
Right, that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, we all good? All right, guys. Thank you very much.